So hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. This video has been such a long time coming. As I'm recording this, I don't know how I'm going to upload them, but as I'm recording this, I just finished season 1 to 11 like synopsis of The Walking Dead, and I mentioned in that video that I'm going to be doing these character deep dives because there's so much to go over. There is so much story. I mean, you're dealing with years and years of content. So I'm going to be covering other characters at some stage in the upcoming weeks, but I thought that we would start the character deep dives with Negan and Maggie. Originally I was going to do just Negan and then just Maggie, but it made more sense to put them together into one video if we're going to be talking about them, their journey, their growth throughout The Walking Dead, and then following them both into Dead City. Doesn't make much sense to split them up. So this video is going to be dealing with Negan Smith and Maggie Rhee. It feels so weird saying their last names. Okay, so first of all, we're going to go through and we're going to... I've just realised I have not touched my hair since I woke up this morning. Oh no. Yep, that's worse. Really did sit down and do my makeup, put on a nice top, and completely forgot to touch my hair. Forgot to fix it. Alright, so we'll start with Negan. We'll go with Negan's backstory first, and then we'll go on to Maggie's. So most of the backstory that we get for Negan, we get from Here's Negan, which was one of the bonus episodes of season 10. Incredible fucking episode. One of the best origin stories or flashback episodes that The Walking Dead ever did. So we learned that he was a PE teacher, or a gym teacher as it's called in America. We learned about him and his wife's relationship, that he lost her, and then we later find out in Dead City that whistling that he's been doing since like the dawn of fucking time originated with Lucille, that when she was weak and when she needed him she'd whistle and he'd come running to her. Little things like that I just loved, throwing in little nuggets of information that just build a story. So obviously the fucking bat was named after her. The bat that he was smashing people's skulls in with, she was named after Lucille. He then goes on to lead the Saviors. The Saviors, we all know them. They're a group of bad guys. They're harsh. And as a leader, he's a fantastic villainous leader. He has that god complex, that cult leader vibe to him that makes him unnerving and fucking scary. I mean, people back in the early days of the Saviors, we see people kneel to him when he walks into a room. People follow him out of fear, or people followed him out of fear rather than actually liking the fucking dude. And then we get into the multiple wives thing, which, oh my god. Basically, he made this deal that like, yeah, you could be my wife and sleep with me and live here, or leave.
Talk to you for a minute, dear wife. There are rules for a reason. Nothing matters if you're dead. You are here because you get that.
That has been such a hot topic of debate. I mean, yes, he did give people the option, look, this is your choice or leave. But when your only other choice is to go back out and possibly die by a walker bite or like starvation out in the streets, is it a choice? And I'm glad that we really went in with that situation when it comes to Sherry and Dwight. Sherry is one of his wives, and then we see she's not happy. She hates him. She hates the situation, as does Dwight. And getting to see Sherry deal with like the fucked upness of everything that happened in the Savior's compound or in the sanctuary, seeing her like deal with that over when she moves over to Fear. It was just a great way to go in on that situation, how it impacted so many people. So his whole thing was power. He always wanted to be in power, hold the power. And if he didn't see you as useful or powerful, you were just fucking dead to him. You know, like Spencer, he just slit his guts out all over the ground.
You got no guts.
The amount of people he just killed and mowed through because he could, because he was like, well, you're fucking useless. But if he liked you, I think that was nearly even worse. If he liked you and he set his sights on you, like we saw it happen with Carl. We saw him strike up some sort of a relationship and he seems almost amused by him. We saw it with Rick. We saw it with Daryl. He was obsessed with breaking Daryl. We also see it with Rosita. She really does shoot her shot. It ends up shooting the shot right into a baseball bat, but she tries. But you see him, even though he's mad, still, he has this respect for people that he views as not equals, because in his egotistical mind, I don't think there is such thing as an equal, but someone who's just that little bit... We got to talk about the moral code before we go on with his storyline. So he talks a bit about it in Dead City, and we see it in the flashback episode of Dead City where we're taken back in time. Simon's his right hand man. We can see the Croat torturing people, and Negan's like not down with that at all, and Simon's not down with it either, because at this point in time I don't think Simon had gone off the rails just yet. But like his moral code it's just so in the grey. It's a fantastic concept. The moral code that he has for himself in concept is good. right? We don't kill fucking kids. You don't rape women. There's certain lines we just don't cross. But he has crossed them. But it's like he bends the rules or views it differently to okay it with himself. So taking the kill kids thing, that only applies to young kids. Because we saw he tried to kill Carl. And a lot of people have argued, no, he wasn't going to do it. He wasn't actually going to do it. Play the clip.
I'm gonna kill Carl, and then Lucille here, she's gonna take your hand. You said I could do it.
Now, yeah, that was him pushed into, between a rock and a hard place. He didn't have any other option. But he had the choice to follow his moral code and just not do that. We did see him kill your man, the guy who was about to rape, I think it was Sasha. He does have quite a hard stance on that. But again, only in a strict sense of the word, because the whole multiple wives situation is a real fucking hairy setup, let me just say. But he didn't view it that way. So he has a way of explaining things away in regards to him and his actions. I think he does have a better moral code than most villains that we've seen in this show, because at least there is a moral code present. My god, the bar is so low it is in hell. Which it should be with villains. Villains are supposed to be bad. They're supposed to be crazy sons of bitches that do shit and say shit that just isn't good because they're a villain. If they were saying good and doing good things, they wouldn't be a villain. We see him later go on to kill his own right-hand man, Simon, because Simon steps out of line and he puts him on the wall as an example. That was Negan's whole thing with the wall. So there was a wall where he'd put saviors that stepped out of line, or people that wronged him, or people he just didn't fucking like. He'd put them on the wall as an example. And we later see that as a fantastic dose of karma when he is locked up in a jail cell by Rick and Michonne as an example. They have the choice, they have the chance to kill him. Rick has the chance to kill him and he doesn't take it. He slits his throat and by some movie magic he ends up alive and in a cell. There's that karma. So when we see him in that cell, he has lost everything. He's got nothing left to his name. Even his name doesn't mean shit anymore. One of my favourite scenes actually takes part in the prison cell, in the jail cell, where you see Maggie sneak in. We're going to talk about Maggie in a minute. But she sneaks in to kill him, and he is taunting her to the best of his ability to get her to come and just fucking kill him. She doesn't. She can see that he is a shell of a man. She can see that he has lost everything and that Rick, in a way, was right in what he was doing, that he's tormented. And that maybe living a life forever in that kind of situation is a fate worse than death. Especially if the person living that jail cell life was begging for death.
Please kill me.
Why?
You have to just do it.
Why should I?
So I can be with my wife. So I can be with Lucille.
He goes on to have a really just colourful story arc with the Whisperers. He decides to join them.
I am at your service, Frowny McTwo-Knives.
Really get in there, learn their ways. Goes to Whisperer school with Beta. And in the end he ends up sleeping with Alpha. You're welcome. I've reminded you all of that.
You're a crass man. I reckoned you might appreciate a crass reward.
And he's the one that ends up killing her. Because he knows when the Whisperers came in and they were like the big bad, he knew their motives. He knew how they worked. He knew how they operated. And I don't think anybody could have gotten in there and gotten into their heads quite like he did. Now, of course, he did that in collaboration. Alright, Dracula. He did that in collaboration with Carol. And I think she is one of the few people that he could have worked with on this. Because I've said it time and time again about the lineup. Anyone that was in the lineup, I don't think they're ever going to forgive him. They're never going to want to talk to him. They're never going to want to see him do well. Because they were there, they saw it. They're scarred. But Carol wasn't there physically. She only heard what happened. I mean, yeah, she saw the aftermath, but that's very different to actually being there and seeing it. So she had just enough distance between her and him, emotionally and mentally, that she could draw him in to help her kill Alpha. And also she knew Negan was one of the very few crazy sons of bitches that could have pulled this off. We also see him do things like, in his redemption arc, as it's called, we'll touch on that in a minute. In his redemption arc, we see him do things like he saves Judith in the middle of a snowstorm. He saves Lydia. He's still a little shit stirrer. We still get one-off comments and remarks from him that remind you he's still the sarcastic little prick that we met back in season 6.
You know, we're all grown-ups here, and none of us would ever let that ruin the long-standing friendships and mutual respect we have.
That is a very mature attitude, Father. Not the father.
Later on then, he ends up getting remarried to Annie, and she gets pregnant. He becomes part of a new community, because I think that's the only way he ever could have really moved on. He couldn't have ever found like redemption or solace or anything in our community, because it's too much. There's too much history there. The only way he could have rebuilt himself would be with someone else, somewhere else, which he did. And we find out what happened to her as well in Dead City, because like we just didn't see her in the finale to The Walking Dead. It's like she'd never fucking existed. But we find out what happened to her in Dead City, that she was attacked and jumped by a group of men. Negan then swooped in, killed them all, and put her and their kid on a train out of fucking town. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then moving towards the end of the show, my God, that scene with Ezekiel, where we think Negan's going to sell Zeke out, but he doesn't. And then Negan and Annie are about to be killed, and Ezekiel stands up and interferes. It's just a great example of like, everybody has a reason to hate Negan. Everybody has a story of Negan, regarding Negan. Everyone knows someone who died, or knew someone who knew someone's cousin who died at Negan's hands or because of Negan. But Zeke jumped in there and stopped that from happening, because that's just Zeke's character. Ezekiel they're at complete opposite ends of the scale. So you have someone like these two characters who both played a heightened, over-the-top version of themselves in order to keep their communities safe, or, you know, following them or having faith in them, to keep faith in them as a leader. But Zeke did it the right way, Negan did it the wrong fucking way. Zeke ruled through respect and people liking him and people wanting to follow him, in serious fucking contrast to Negan, who people only followed him because they were scared. Even if you were like totally fucked in the head and you liked his teachings, you only fell in with him to begin with because you were scared and you needed protection.
I know this warden's playbook. Using fear as a weapon. Fear's not going to work. But hope, and that is your thing, Ezekiel. It is definitely not mine.
So like when Negan gives that speech about him having to be the guy that everyone wanted to see and him having to play a role, it is kind of reminiscent of Ezekiel, but they are nothing alike. Similar concept, but they really truly could not be any more different. And it's interesting that Negan sees himself as that archetype, as that type of character, that I did what I had to do for the people. But this scene really showed Negan how people must have viewed him. I mean, you can make amends and you can try and do good as much as you can, but at the end of the day, unless you experience it, you can't relate. And he did experience it. He experienced, holy shit, I'm about to die, my woman's about to die, my kid's about to die, what the fuck is going to happen? This is all my fault. Oh my God. When the last time something like this happened, he was the one on the other end. He was the one in power. He was the one towering over everybody else. He saw what it was like in a way to look at himself. And then, you know, with him having a kid on the way, I think it made him immortal. It brought him down to earth and just evaporated the God complex of someday all you're going to be is a fucking story. What do you want people to say? And I think he never had to think about that until he got married and had a kid. That it's great to live in a glory and power and be Negan, the big fucking motherfucker, and his motherfucking leather jacket. But when that fades, what then? What are people going to remember you for? And he wants to leave behind a better legacy for his kid. We see him apologise to Maggie. She doesn't forgive him.
When I was down on my knees, I was about to lose everything. I finally understood what you must have felt. I know that I probably owe you more than this, but I am so sorry.
And the show ends with him on the outside, literally, as everybody's sitting down together laughing. He's outside like a fucking loner stalking around in the garden. He always will be an outsider here. He'll never be someone who fits in. Like I said earlier, he has to go and find community somewhere else because it ain't here. It's never going to be here. You can be tolerated, but it doesn't mean you're accepted. And I think he's learned that throughout the few bitter years of being an outsider. Alright, jumping over to Maggie. So, she started out as the farmer's daughter. Pre-Negan, before all that stuff, she lost everything that she possibly could. She sees her parents die, she saw her sister die, actually multiple siblings die, but, you know, Beth was the most striking example of that because we saw that too. She met Glenn, she got pregnant, so she had that going. But then she loses all of that when she meets Negan. We'll get to that in a minute. But she's a smart character. She always was such a smart person that kind of, looking back on it now, yeah, she was destined to be leader from the early days of some community. I mean, back when we were going into the prison, when we were trying to break into the prison and clear the walkers, she's the one that figured out how to kill the riot gear walkers. When she was captured by the governor, she's the one who would not break, who was humiliated. I mean, that scene is so fucked up. But she wouldn't crack, she wouldn't break until they threatened Glenn. Which just shows you what kind of character she is and always has been. That she's loyal. And it's not that she doesn't have regard for her life, because she does. But, like, you can threaten her all you want. You can threaten to kill her and she'd be like, Still not talking, but as soon as you threaten somebody she loves, she just cracks and crumbles. She will not see people that she loves in pain. So moving on to the lineup, and I think it's because it's been so long ago that people are so quick to be like, oh my god, that was forever ago. And it's like, yeah, but it still happened to her. It was start of season 7 that happened, which I don't even know what year that was. I want to say it was like 2017, somewhere around that mark, maybe 2016. So yeah, it was years ago for viewers. And for Maggie as a character, it was even longer because there's been a bunch of time jumps. But that's not something that goes away with time. You don't wake up one day and go, oh, is it the 10-year anniversary? Alright, I'm over it. She had to watch her husband's skull be bashed in, and that scene of her sitting down beside his body afterwards as well when he was dead. After everything they went through as a couple, I mean, with the Terminus storyline, with them trying to find each other, and just life constantly kicking her in the nuts. This was just... And she was sick too, on top of all that. She was sick and she was going to try and get medical attention. So to be plopped from that, it's like if you were in an ambulance ride and somebody just took over the ambulance and decided to drive you into the middle of a fucking war zone. It's too much for a pregnant woman to handle. So yeah, she loses Glenn to Negan, and I don't think she'll ever get over that. We'll talk about forgiveness and all that shit in a minute, because she takes stabs at it, to be fair to her, and she gives a speech in Dead City about it, but I don't think that's something that's possible with her. So she later goes on to become leader of Hilltop, because she kills Gregory, because that little weasel motherfucker tried to kill her, so it was fair. I don't want no Maggie slander in my comments. So that's how she ends up leader of Hilltop. We later see her doing deals with Georgie, who is trading goods with her, trading, I think it was records, to try and like build a better future, to try and preserve stuff. So she's doing her thing, she's vibing. When Rick killed Negan, these sleeves are really becoming a hazard. They're getting stuck on everything. We see him slit his throat, and then we see Maggie be like, yeah, finally, sweet death. But then no, we save him and we lock him in a cell. Again, her falling to her knees, just heartbroken, is so... How much more are you going to put this woman through?
No! No, he killed Glenn!
I don't blame her for being super pissed off with Rick and Michonne. I would be too. I'd be like, listen, I would have killed every saviour in my way until I got to Negan. And nothing would have stopped me. Oh my god, that's so harsh. Yeah, I know. That's what happens if you kill someone I love in an apocalypse. But like, we don't see her go totally dark side. We see her like on the edges of dark side a few times. But she doesn't. It's not that she forgives the saviours, but like we see her with fucking Alden. He's an ex-saviour. We see the two of them talking. They build up somewhat of a relationship throughout the episodes, throughout the seasons. She's fucking distraught over his death when he dies in that church. And he was an ex-saviour. She should hate him. She should want to stab him in his sleep. We'll talk about that too in a second. But she doesn't. And saviours are captured instead of just being like slaughtered. Can't say that I would have made that decision. So the saviours, let's swoop around back to them, because we're talking about them at the moment. So we're not really swooping around back to fuck all, are we? We're just staying on topic. We had run-ins with them before the lineup, with the Dwight and Sherry and your one. Oh my god, I can't remember her name, but I know she reminded me of Justin Bieber. When they're out in the middle of the forest and they just stole insulin and they're on the run, they run into Daryl. That's kind of where we learn a bit about the saviours. What they're like as a company, as a community. They're not that fucking great. Your one then dies and it's all so fucking dramatic. But the real kind of first hello we get into them is the sleep and saviour scene, which everybody keeps bringing up to this day when it comes to Negan doing fucked up stuff, being whatever. People still rationalise it by bringing up the sleep and saviours scene. So basically Rick went and made a deal with Gregory pre-Maggie. Maggie was not leader of Hilltop yet. Rick goes, makes a deal with him, like, listen, if we sort these fucking saviours out, like, can we work together, can we do something then? Yes, it's harsh, yes, it's fucked up. They go into the saviours' outpost, everyone's asleep, and they kill him in their sleep. You can see a lot of the characters struggling with this, but at the time it's like, well, it's them or us, we do this, or like, we're fucked, basically. Yeah, that's not a great way to explain it, and it's not an excuse, it explains it, but it doesn't excuse it. And then because of this leads to the Negan lineup, because Negan is like, oh my god, I mean, from his example, from his point of view, sorry, you have this new group swoop in out of nowhere, kill a bunch of your fucking dudes and try and like shake up and change everything. As a leader, Negan, as leader, is like, I gotta nip this in the bud and stop this. If I show weakness or if I show like compassion, someone else is just gonna fucking off me and take over from me. I am replaceable to an extent. To him, he's got a good thing going here. From Maggie's point of view, she's barely fucking conscious, and then she sees her husband and her friend die. And not even by like a walker or a disease or they get bit or whatever. No, just by a dude. Just by some fucking guy. Very sexy guy. Granted, yes, but still. So the Sleeping Savers, like I said, it is a scene that people bring up an awful lot when they're trying to explain away. And Negan is that kind of character too, that people do try and explain away what he did and okay what he did. And it's like, you can enjoy a character and their arc without explaining away and trying to come up with excuses for why they did what they did. Just watch the character and enjoy it. I do believe redemption is possible for certain characters, but I don't think it's needed for every character. Negan's redemption arc has been super interesting to watch, trying to watch him deal with who he was and what he did versus who he is now. And we saw him struggle as well with the shame around Lucille and all that, like, backstory. But that doesn't mean that you have to try and okay away everything he did. Like, I love him as a character. I think he's fucking fascinating. And I can understand why he did what he did in certain instances, but I'm not going to excuse him. I'm not going to be like, yeah, like he was in the right, because I don't think he was. But then, is there a right in this world? My God, what a deep question to be asking on a Saturday morning. That was Negan and Maggie's kind of brief relationship together, from their first meeting to them very briefly throwing eyes at each other, fucking daggers, from across the room throughout The Walking Dead. We had that scene where she goes into his jail cell and says, you know, you're already fucking dead. Negan's gone, you shell of a human.
I came to kill Negan, and you're already worse than dead.
But forgiveness and redemption is something that we've seen Maggie struggle with, and in my opinion, I don't think she needs to struggle with it because it's up to her. Like, if you don't want to forgive this motherfucker, don't. It's as simple as that. And I feel like everybody around her keeps kind of pushing her in that direction when it's not needed. You don't need to forgive somebody for wronging you or hurting you or fucking you up, which he did to her. He shook her life upside down. But if, like, as long as you can move past it and exist and coexist and just, you know, be, then fine. I do feel bad for her in a way because, like, we see Herschel say to her, so the concept of Dead City is that her son gets robbed by the Croat because the Croat wants Negan, because it turns out we need a leader of Manhattan, and the Croat was like, oh my God, do I have a guy for this? Which is confusing in itself, because why doesn't your one just lead? Blondie, the girl we saw at the end of Dead City with the bob, why doesn't she just fucking lead? Why are you bringing in an outsider that you don't even know? And that what you do know, he is just crazy, psychotically dark, has done all this nuts shit in the past. You want to invite that into your home? But yeah, so the Croat robs Herschel, and we find out later on that Maggie lied to Negan. Maggie said they took my son and they took my grain, because they took my grain. Nothing but headaches up in Manhattan. Because after The Walking Dead, Maggie goes on to form a sort of new hilltop called Brickstown, Brickland, Bricks, the Bricks. Croat is an ex-savior, so he knows all about Negan's way of life. And he basically wants Negan, so she kind of guilt trips Negan into coming along with her into helping, and then Negan finds out that she was lying. There was never no grain missing, and they only took Herschel as like a bargaining chip. They took Herschel as a, you get him back when we get Negan kind of deal. So anyways, episode 1, we see that lovely scene of her with the knife up to his throat. The aggression is just truly something else between the two of them. My hair is wrecking my head today. I'm starting to feel like a Lego person. I feel like my hair is just like onto my head like a piece of Lego. It's because I'm trying to grow it out and it's killing me. And then that scene is mirrored directly in the last episode of Dead City, where we see Negan with the knife to Maggie's throat. Just those little parallels. It's always a back and forth between them. It's always a give and a take. And they're always going to be at odds. And in that scene where he's with Maggie, where he has the knife to her throat, you see it. You see him say, like, you're never going to forgive me. It doesn't matter what I say. Like, you're never going to get over it.
It doesn't matter what excuses I give you or how many apologies I offer. You can't get over it.
And I think after everything that he's done and everything that he's been through, like, it has been a huge time jump. From his point of view, I can see it from his point of view. It's been years. He's done years of being locked up, of going through change, of helping to bring down bad guys that were threatening our group. But like, he helped bring down the Whisperers. He helped save kids. He saved Judith. He saved Lydia. He has done good. Now he's gotten married, moved on, he's had a kid. He's a different person to who he was back then. It doesn't undo what he did, but he has put in the work to at least become somewhat of a better person and to try and do better. And maybe after getting married and having a kid, he can relate to Maggie now too, of like, what would you do for them? You know, and I think he understands that after him killing the people who attacked his wife, he's going to hate those dudes forever, even though they're dead. They jumped your wife. So I think Negan now, because he's experienced that, will look at Maggie and know, you look at me that way. So we see Herschel have that little moment with Maggie in the car when she finally gets him back, and Negan does the exchange. We see him walk willingly into that vault, and there's a lovely moment between Negan and Maggie of like, she's shocked that he's doing this, and I think she's shocked as well that she's allowing herself to do this, that she's giving Negan over, knowing I don't know what's going to happen to him after this, but she doesn't care because she wants her son back. And we do see a little bit of that ruthlessness throughout the show as well with her. I mean, when the kid that Negan adopted, what's the fucking child's name? I can't remember. Ginny. Negan has kind of taken this kid under his wing and is reluctant guardian to this child. We later find out that's because he killed her dad. Her dad was one of the guys that attacked Annie, which is Negan's wife. So he killed her dad, and then he felt bad about it, so he went to scope out wherever the fuck Ginny was at. Yeah, but there's people saying that could be a lie too, that could have just been a tactic that he used, that he said that to her to get her to leave, to get her to go away. Anyway, so she comes to Manhattan looking for Negan, and then Negan ends up, Maggie ends up burning, she's about to burn one of Ginny's bears. Because she doesn't want Negan to know that Ginny is in Manhattan, because if Negan knows that, he's going to turn right the fuck around and go looking for this kid. So we have seen examples of Maggie being ruthless when it comes to Herschel, especially in this show. Can you fucking blame her? It's her kid. But yeah, so we get that scene with Herschel where they're sitting in the car together, and he says to her, you know, that it's like she looks through him. She's always looking past him, over his shoulder. She's never really present with him. That her obsession with Negan, or her fear of something happening to her or Herschel, has completely overtaken her life. That she's never in the moment, she's never present, because she's always anticipating what could happen.
It's like my whole life you've been looking over my shoulder, watching for him, waiting for him.
That's not true.
You never see me.
The season ends with her talking to Herschel, and she says that she's going to let it go. I don't know if that's possible. Some people have argued that it is, some people have argued that it isn't. I think if it was possible, it would have occurred by now. I think she would have been able to work through it and come to some kind of conclusion, but she hasn't. Maybe that reality check from Herschel was what she needed. Maybe that's going to be the final nail in the coffin that pushes her into like putting this thing to rest. But I don't know. I mean, like Negan has been the thorn in her side since she first met him. Hello, you know, her first encounter with him, he fucking boinked her husband on the head and sent him to heaven. You've everything that happened in between, and now here we are, years later. She is somewhere else. She's somewhere else with her son, living her life, and some crazy motherfucker comes out of the woodwork, robs your kid, and is like, "Get me, Negan." You know, he's still there. So the season ends with Negan being like roped into being some kind of old version of himself. We see that lady telling him like, oh, we need you to protect what we have. We need your leadership. We need you, basically. And she's not asking neither. She presents him with Herschel's toe that she cut off and then threatens to go back for more. So she's forcing Negan into helping her, into collaborating with her. And the fact that Negan is going to have to say yes shows how he views Herschel and the guilt, I guess, he carries over the whole Glenn thing. But it's interesting to see him and how he responds to the idea of being in power again, because he seems afraid of it. I mean, we see him say when he's talking about the Croat that like the closer he gets, the more uneasy or anxious that he gets, because he's afraid of hearing that song that he doesn't want to listen to anymore. And I made the point in my reaction that, well, you know, it's your song, Negan. The Croat just covered it. And I still stand by that, because it is shame that he doesn't want to hear it anymore. He doesn't align with those morals anymore. But at the end of the day, it's still your history. It's still part of your story, and you can't run from it. Doesn't mean you need to like wallow in it, but you can't exactly, you know, get away. But we see him being worried about like that old him returning, or what'll happen if he falls back into that mindset. It makes me wonder if he can get in with them and become somewhat of a leader or somewhat of like a big force again. Will he take it? Because that should mean that he'd be able to bring Annie and his son back, that he could protect them. Because if he's like top dog again, who the fuck is going to go up against him? No one. He'd be able to bring his wife and kid back. And where would that put him and Maggie then? Would she work somewhat with him? Or would they work together to bring down this new big bad blondie woman? Something that I really liked about Dead City regarding Negan and Maggie was the stories they told each other. So we saw Negan telling Maggie about the time he was a kid and he was supposed to go on a trip to the Statue of Liberty with his dad, but it never happened. And then later we see Maggie tell Negan the story of how she always wanted to go to Macy's as a kid to see Santa. And it's like you have these two super different characters who have such a long history, but both of them share a childhood dream. Both of them wanted to see Manhattan as a kid. And here they both are now, exactly where they wanted to be one day, but they're with someone they don't like. They're in a situation that is not fun. And I think it's just interesting to find some sort of common ground like that between the two of them. And I liked watching them share such personal stories that really meant nothing to the plot. I mean, it had nothing got to do with anything that was going on, but it was a bonding moment. It was a moment for them to open up a little bit. So is redemption possible? I don't know. I mean, season 2, I reckon they're going to have to work together. I don't think he's going to go back to being against her, or she's going to go back to being against him. I think we probably will keep the dynamic of what we had in season 1, of them being forced to work together. And given that speech he gave about like being cautious of his past or afraid of his past, or there seems to be a lot of shame surrounding like what he's done as well to him. Like Negan has a lot of shame. I wonder, will he lean on her? Will he like use her somewhat as a moral compass, or will he totally revert back to old Negan? I don't know. She knows that she's put the obsession with him to bed in order for her to be able to move on, or in order for her to be able to connect with Herschel, because that's something that was explored as well in Dead City, is that she couldn't really connect with him. The last time she saw him before he was kidnapped, they had an argument. We see them struggling to speak to each other once she comes back. I think she'd do anything for him, and I think if she is to forgive Negan or to get over this or to go into cahoots with him next season, it will be for Herschel. While we're on the topic of the Croat and Negan, which we were not on at all, we were not on that topic, so let's move to it. It's interesting seeing Negan's impact after everything that has happened. I mean, he has changed so much and moved on to an extent, and it just makes me wonder how many other ex-saviors are there out there that have decided, I'm Negan, but with their own freaky fucking twist on it. Because the Croat is... what a fucking character. But how many more is there out there? I mean, we saw a bit of that, I guess, in The Walking Dead when we met Brandon, I think his name was. He was the kid whose parents were saviors, and he went absolutely dark side. I mean, my guy. And Negan ended up having to bash his fucking head in. Simon also went batshit under Negan's leadership, following his rules. Even though I know Simon didn't follow his rules, he broke his rules. The point I'm making is anybody that has followed Negan, that we have seen long term, has not done particularly well for themselves. Brandon went off the rails and was killed. Simon went off the rails and was killed. The Croat,
Like mommy and daddy coming together. You know?
no words needed. So I think Negan being faced with that time and time again is just so cool to fucking see. It's like shame. It's like beating him over the head with a shame branch. Where, like, look what you did. And you don't even need to remind him with words. You can just show him these characters and be like... But yeah, I love seeing the two of them together. They're incredibly strong characters on their own, but when you force them together, the friction and chaos that they create is off the fucking charts. I mean, they've more history than any two characters in the Walking Dead universe, so it makes sense, and I love it. And I can see both sides. I can. I just think that Maggie is a bigger woman than me, because I would have murdered him fucking dead. I would have killed him. I would have stabbed him in the eyeballs and then fed his eyeballs in a soup to some goats. But it is interesting to see him become such a cautionary tale, where he was telling the story of like, oh, I knew a guy, and he was telling his story, and you have Maggie finish the sentence for him of like, yeah, well, he fucking lost, didn't he?
A fella down south showed up out of nowhere, a lot like this guy, formed an army out of psychopaths, and he forced people to join. They decided it was time to take that hammer back.
So what happened?
It worked.
Looking back on hindsight of everything that they've done, been through, both individually and as overlapping storylines together, it's just so crazy seeing how they've ended up now, yet again, entangled. I don't know where it's going to go. I think forgiveness is possible, but I don't think it's necessary. I think even if Negan died in place for Herschel, I don't think she'd forgive him, because he's still the guy that killed her husband. That's it for my deep dive on Negan and Maggie. I hope you guys enjoyed. I tried to put in as many points as I could, following their relationship to each other, following their individual storylines. What huge fucking characters. Both of them have experienced like rises and falls. Both of them experienced being on top of their game and being lower than dirt. And they're two probably of my favourite characters, both from The Walking Dead and just in TV in general. I don't understand people that ship them. I am Mrs. Listen, I am always Mrs. Do what you want, see what you want, project whatever the fuck you want onto a character, because it's TV. And TV, to an extent, is quite individual. It's you're watching it. You know, your eyeballs are the ones seeing this and processing the information. So do what you want with it. If you want to ship someone, fine. Them, on the other hand, Negan and Maggie, on the other hand, I don't get. I can't wrap my head around. I think people are like confusing insane acting chemistry with just insane chemistry, and people are like seeing, I don't know, They're reading certain moments as romantic when they're just supposed to be intense. But that's just my 2 cents on that. Ship them if you want to ship them. I just don't understand it. But yeah, so what do you guys think? Let me know down below. Do you think she'll ever forgive him? Do you think it's necessary? Do you think that he's done everything he could possibly do in his redemption arc to make him worthy of being forgiven? I hope you enjoyed this one. This one took a bit to film. This one didn't take as long as the other one. The other one I did is like an hour and a half long. My god, that video nearly fucking killed me. The amount of times my computer shut down while editing it because I just wasn't able. Woo, ridiculous. But yeah, let me know what you thought. Hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you all soon.